Hi everyone, my name is Simon. Welcome to NetCafe with Simon, where we discuss everything networking related. Today I have a very special guest to discuss tech world and opportunity in the tech career. I have today with me my good friend Santiago. Thank you very much for joining
Hi,
us.
everyone.
And can you maybe start with the very basic? Can you maybe introduce yourself and just tell us what you do in the tech world currently, what you are into?
Okay, my name is Santiago. I'm a telecommunications engineer as well as Shimon. Actually, we met a couple of years ago. We were working at the same company,
Yeah.
and I haven't changed my career over the last couple of years. I used to work for a service provider, and a couple of years ago, I made the switch to a telecommunications manufacturer.
Okay, okay. So what is your current role? What are current tasks, and what is the current sort of products that you're working with?
Right now, I'm working with fixed networks.
Mm-hmm.
And this is quite a new experience for me in a commercial point of view. From my academic background, I have more solid basis in fixed and optical networks, but most recently, of the last couple of years, I specialize more in mobile networks, especially LTE and 5G.
So can you maybe tell us some story, or how did you started in IT? Did you start in already in doing something IT related in high school, and then during the study period you sort of extended your skills? What is the background story? How you started in IT and telecom?
So I would say that my path in IT was very classical, kind
Mm-hmm.
of stereotypical, if you would like to call it that way. Because since I was a little kid, I was very curious about how things work. I enjoyed math, so I knew that at some point I was going to be an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
I finished high school. I decided to study electronics. Later, I specialized in telecommunications. So I would say I had a very standard path. And
Mm-hmm.
by the final stage of my studies, I had the opportunity to join the telecommunications market.
Yeah, and this is actually where we just landed with the next question. I wanted to ask you, how did you manage to clear your first interview, I guess your first IT job?
My first, I would say, my first pure IT job was when I was studying my master's. And I joined a company that focused mainly on firewalls, load balancers.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working on the team in charge of troubleshooting them
Mm-hmm.
and writing the testing framework
Mm-hmm.
for mainly for firewalls and load balancers.
Okay.
So since the very beginning, it was very telecommunications oriented. Even though some software and programming skills were required,
Mm-hmm.
the final product was just pure telecommunications and networking
Got
equipment.
it, got it. So it was something like a Juniper or Cisco equipment that you were
F5,
using?
F5.
Okay, got it, got it. I wanted to also to ask you, how do you keep up with new technologies and your technical skills? How you as an engineer make sure that you are constantly up to date with new technologies? What advice would you give to any engineers out there in the field that are following, that has to follow with the new trends in the industry?
Learning by doing. That's
Mm,
the best way to keep up with everything, and especially the IT industry is changing very fast. An advice I would give to someone that is interested into joining this this industry, let's say, is that the most important skill is the skill to learn how to learn and to
mm,
be very flexible.
yeah,
And actually,
absolutely.
you mentioned if I follow some podcasts and if I have some kind of inspiration, and I would say that my inspiration comes very quite far from the IT world because not so long ago I was listening to an interview from Professor Yuval Noah Harari,
Mm-hmm,
and he said that years ago, if you compare your professional career with building something, let's say building a house,
mm-hmm,
you would need very
mm-hmm,
strong fundamentals, rock solid,
mm-hmm,
because you knew that the skills you would learn would be useful for the next 5, 10, 20
mm-hmm,
years. Right now, it looks more like a tent. You have a tent, you
mm-hmm.
install your tent, you build it, but you have to be so very flexible to pick it up and go somewhere else later.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
that's very important skills, a skill and a set of skills. Because, for example, imagine that you have a time machine
Mm-hmm,
and that you travel to the year 2000. Try to explain to someone, an average person in the year 2000, what a social community manager is. what a content
Definitely,
moderator is in
definitely,
social media.
absolutely,
This
absolutely,
person would be quite confused and maybe would be thinking that you're joking, but
absolutely. Yeah.
it's like that. And now, bringing an example closer to IT, let's say
Hmm.
that you traveled 5 years back and try to explain someone 5 years ago what is a prompt engineer.
Hmm.
This the conception of a prompt engineer was acquainted only like 2 years ago, one
Yeah.
year and a half.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 1 year
So
ago. Yeah.
you see
Definitely.
how fast is this tempo,
Yeah.
how important it is to keep up with everything.
Yeah.
And the only way to do it actually is to be very proactive, to be
Hmm.
very curious, and to be very flexible, to learn how to learn. Yeah.
Definitely, Santiago. These are excellent examples. I remember when I was working with one of the vendors as my first internship. It was already like 8 years ago, and the vendor was releasing the book about new technologies, and they like very new technologies, right? And I remember I was reading the chapter about massive MIMO, and I thought like, what the hell is massive MIMO, right? And today when you look outside your window, you see the 5G antennas, with
It's
the that
everywhere.
are 33 by 33 transmission branches, right? Why 8 years ago it was just on the paper of the book that I was reading, like maybe it was even 10 years ago. But back then LTE, I mean, still LTE is one of the most reliable and robust telecom standards that we have. But 10 years ago it was the technology, right? There was buzz about LTE, and today we have a 5G, and we have all this new sort of fancy technologies, not only of course in telecom, but also in IT, right? With cloud computing and all of that. And definitely you're so much right. And Harari also, he writes so many interesting books about technology and how we are progressing quickly as a society. That's just unbelievable, right? How fast everything goes these days.
Yeah, and going following this path of this Professor Harari, I think it's something really important in general when you try to build your career is to be surrounded by very smart people, by
Hmm.
mentors, good mentors,
Hmm.
because there are smart people everywhere, but they should also be like very patient and be willing to share this knowledge, to mentor
Yeah.
you actually.
Yeah.
And I would say I've been lucky enough to meet these people and
Mhm.
this kind of people, and this has also helped me over time.
It's absolutely so much true what you're saying. I think also what mentoring brings to your career is also the perspective. If you see someone that's been working in the industry for 40 years, let's say, they already have seen, and I met some of these people in my current workplace that still remember when they were deploying GSM. And this is just unbelievable. 2G, right? Or then a
Yeah.
3G, and then there was 4G, and now it's a 5G. So there is this circles that they went through, right? And I guess with some time we also will say this to some people that we will be mentoring hopefully one day, and telling them, oh, in the back days we're working with the 5G, and today we have a 7G or whatever, right?
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
that's the perspectives is completely different. I wanted to ask you also why we speak about keeping the knowledge sort of fresh. Do you looking at any certifications from IT or networking vendors?
Yes, yes. It depends on what you want to do, actually. Depends on the path you want to follow. If you want to focus purely on networking, I would say Cisco is the obvious answer to
Obvious
that
choice, right?
question. I remember back in the day, I don't know if it's still something that is relevant. You could have certifications from regarding programming language. And at some point, Microsoft offered certifications for C Sharp,
Hmm.
and Oracle offers certifications for Java. Remember
Yeah.
the Java Enterprise Edition developer, something like that. But I'm talking about something that was common or standard kind
Hmm.
of 10, 15 years ago. Right now, regarding certifications, I would say it's just about cloud, AWS, Azure, GCP. Those are like the big three. Of course, you could be certified in, let's say, the other companies that are working in this market. For example, Oracle, Huawei, IBM. They
Yeah.
are
Nokia. Hmm.
Nokia. They have as well cloud products. But I would say the standard nowadays, it could change in 1 year or in 5 years, is
Hmm.
just AWS, Azure, and GCP.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And what's also is so impressive, I think, when it's comes for these certifications. 1 year ago, I took Cisco CCNA, and Cisco certs has been on the market for such a long time, and I was reading the curriculum, and it's constantly being refreshed. The material in certification is constantly being refreshed to keep up with the technology pace, and some of the chapters were very very new. So of course you still have the sort of this classic routing system, or for example NAT, or I don't know, DHCP, how to configure DHCP on the Cisco router. But there are a lot of focus and scope on the configuration management tools like Ansible, Chef, or Puppet. Of course this networking is still 90% of the certification, but you see that there's also a lot of new knowledge that you also need to learn and know how to use it in practice, right?
Yes, you need to get the basics. You need to understand, let's say, the heart or the soul of how the system works.
Yeah, the
But
bloodline.
yeah, but what you mentioned, for example, if we extrapolate this conversation to mobile networks,
Mm-hmm.
up until now, either if it's LTE or either if it is 5G, you have the core network. The core network connects to a base station. The base station has several modules, and then these modules connect to the antenna, and the antenna provides the signal to us, the final customers. So
Yeah.
let's say you have a lot of variables in the equation. It's a very complex system. 6G is going just to be core network antenna. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Everything in the middle is going to disappear physically, because all this system is going to be virtualized
Mm-hmm.
directly in a data center. So regarding virtualization in communication, in telecommunications, regarding virtualization and cloud, those used to be very academic concepts. Now they're being slowly deployed, and in a couple of years, it's going to be the standard.
Mm-hmm.
And all the hardware part, this decentralization of hardware is going to disappear for sure. It's going to be
Yeah.
just cloud and antenna in this context.
Mm-hmm.
Just one server in a data center, one
Yeah.
antenna. That's all.
Yeah.
Everything else is doesn't mean that it's going to actually be disappear, become obsolete. It will switch from a physical world to a virtual world.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't want to dive to the in the topic of network architecture, because we can also dive deep into the how, for example, 2G architecture evolved into 3G, and then 3G into the 4G. But of course, you are very much right on how everything will change. And I also have met someone working in the industry, and just told me that they adopted cloud because for such a long time it was unsecure solution. So with the improvement of the security domain in cloud, this is what makes also cloud accessible for every enterprise, right? Because now you know that you're installing something that not only will cut your costs, your server costs, but also it's secure, right? So this evolution in the security domain was very important to these guys that I have spoken with.
And actually, it's funny that you mentioned security, because I'm not a developer, but some of my friends work on cybersecurity, and they always complain that
Mm.
developers don't care about security.
Mm-hmm.
They can develop great software, very functional, very efficient, very efficient. It does the job. It works great, but
Mm-hmm.
it has a lot of vulnerabilities,
Mm-hmm.
and this is one of the problems that you could kind of avoid if
Mm-hmm.
if you are in a cloud native environment.
Yeah, definitely, definitely, definitely. I wanted to ask you. This is quite easy question, but I wanted to ask you what sort of motivates you and sort of gives you fun in when you work in tech and you work with engineering. What is the most fun part
it's
of
it's
engineering for
it's
you?
very dynamic. It's very
Mm,
dynamic, as we have been discussing. It's changing all the time at a very
yeah,
fast pace. You have to learn all the time,
yeah.
even if you don't like to. Even if you don't want to, there will be some point that you will face something new, a new challenge. And even if you ask senior members of your team, they might not know anything as well. So you have at the beginning, you would have to improvise, and you have to be flexible, and to keep learning.
Hmm.
That's the main motivation for
Yeah,
me in this
yeah.
industry.
For me, it's something similar, but actually, for me, the biggest fun is when just things work. When I do
Oh,
some
yeah.
coding and I, for example, integrate CI/CD with Git and then with my code, and I see, the wheels are turning, and I was building infrastructure for some time, and then on top of that, I have AWS virtual machines, and everything works. That just gives me so much fun. Of course, before it works, it's just a nightmare because you constantly have some errors and you go through them, you need to troubleshoot, you of course chat gpt them, but in general, at the end of the day, when I see the things are working, this is just the best fun for me.
That's like probably the most rewarding sensation you could have, that after struggling for days or even weeks with
uh,
something, you just solve it. And actually, coming back to one of your questions, you reminded me of one of my my favorite journalists as well, Johnny Harris. He
mhm,
has one video on YouTube. It's like how taking a picture of a galaxy almost kills me, something like
mhm,
that. Because it's exactly this experience. You would think like it's just to set up your telescope and take the picture, and that's all. And he has spent weeks configuring the telescope, processing the images, taking pictures. The whole process was so time consuming and exhausting.
mhm.
But at the end of the day, when he got the picture of the galaxy,
Yeah.
what you said, it was super rewarding and it was amazing. And in this industry, I think you can have this feeling in you can microdose, let's say, this sensation day after day, week after week, when you have a new sprint and you have new tasks, and at the beginning you have no idea what's going on, but over
Mhm.
time you find out, and yeah, solving a problem, developing something, seeing how it works, and seeing that your work had some impact, and it's deployed in production and it works and
Yeah.
nothing breaks. So
Yeah. And it's
that's
secure and secure.
yeah.
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 Absolutely. Santiago, also have a question to you about the skill sets. So, as we already discussed, there are just so many different technologies, pieces of software, cloud providers, all of that. It just makes me crazy. It just makes me crazy to learn all of that, to be, the top of the game and be constantly competitive on the job market. But I would like to ask you, from your perspective, what are sort of the three skills that engineer, whether it's a networking, telecom, IT, you name it, engineer must know to be competitive on the job market? What do you think?
Linux,
Linux,
for sure.
absolutely.
It would be easy to name a programming language.
Mm,
Right now, the most popular one is, of course, Python, but it depends on what you need to do. And
yeah.
actually, if you extrapolate the programming language part I mean, if you programming languages are used to automate something. So I would say the second main skill you should have is automating, but
Hmm.
giving a more specific definition or a more specific context, I would say, is algorithms and data structures,
Hmm.
because all the programming language out there handle this and deal with this all the time.
Hmm.
So, based on your career, based on your preferences, you should choose the language. But the core of it is just being able to deal with algorithms and data structures.
Yeah. And the third one?
The third one, I would say, flexibility to learn
Hmm.
for real. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, for example, with Linux, it's not going anywhere. It has been with industry for such a long time, and everywhere you need to use the command line. Everywhere, really. I would say, the biggest mistake I made when I started to sort of extending my skills and learning, I jumped into this all the fancy technologies like Azure or AWS or Jenkins and setting up the CI/CD pipelines. But very quickly, I realized I will go nowhere without command line and Linux skills.
Yeah.
This is really the backbone of your skills. You need to know your CLI. You really need to know, because otherwise you will not. Of course, you can set up, I don't know, one virtual machine on AWS. Like, you can just click it through. It will take you, let's say, 1 minute. That's fine. But if you need to set up, for example, a group of the virtual machines, like 50 or 500, and each of them need to have a different set of the parameters, for example, different names, you need to have the automating scripts that automate the deployment, right? So this is why we also have this super tools like Terraform that is doing this for us. But still, this is really the backbone of everything: Linux and CLI. Absolutely.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Linux is. I mean, it's everywhere. You can run away from it. And
No. No.
actually, at some point, when you know how to use it well, it's very. You find the beauty of it, and you
Mm-hmm.
get used to it. And it's
Yeah.
a very powerful tool.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like basic skill you should have.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you also can do one thing in so many different ways with so many different commands, and it just works. It just
Yeah.
works. Once you learn, for example, the file structure or folder structure, files structure in Linux, you know everything where to find, which logs are necessary for you to accomplish the tasks. So that's definitely an important point. Coming back to the next question, something that you already partially answered, so I would like to know what gives you. Do you have any blogs or podcasts or books that you are reading to be inspired and grow as an engineer to learn some new perspectives? You mentioned Harari. You also mentioned Johnny Harris. But do you there is something more that you're also looking at?
Besides them, there's a YouTube channel I like, Veritasium. The guy that is in charge of this channel, he's a PhD in physics. So his videos are about very complex topic with a strong scientific background, and he tries to make this content understandable for, let's say, the average citizen. Some of his videos, I gotta be honest, I don't fully understand them because they are very complex, but I really enjoy at least
Mm-hmm.
just having a grasp, like a general idea of what he's talking about. Option answer to this question would be MKBHD, this
Mm-hmm.
YouTuber from the United States. It's more about, like, he's a YouTuber that mainly reviews tech products, especially
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
smartphones.
yeah, he's very well known.
And there is a former journalist from Box. I recommend Box as well. Johnny Harris used to work there. Cleo, I think that's
Mm-hmm.
her name, and her channel is huge if true. Her scope is about things that are they might be huge if it's true, actually,
Mm-hmm.
and it's mostly about science and technology.
Yeah, we'll add all the links in the description so you can guys also check it out. Wow, that's a good list of the inspiration, definitely. Sometimes I also watch on top of what you said, I would also add Network Chuck. I don't know if you know him.
Yes, yes, yes. The guy with the
As I
bird.
absolutely
Yes,
love this
yes,
guy. He's just so.
yes,
I mean,
yes, yes,
when I
yes.
watch
Of
these
course.
videos, it really seems to me like he's having so much fun with the tools
Yes,
and with the things that he builds, and see, oh, you have to check this guy, you have to check this guy, and it's just brings so much, joy. And it's sort of like we are being kids and we are playing with the tools like Linux. So
yes.
he makes just learn fun, and I really adore that. I really adore that. Yeah,
Linus Tech Tips
yeah,
is a similar channel to that one, and it's a
yeah,
classic as well. Linus Tech
yeah.
Tips, very
Okay.
similar to
Yeah.
Network Chart.
Yeah. Remember, if you want to learn some Azure networking, you can also check out Netcafe with Simon.
Of
Also.
course, that's like that's a golden resource regarding Azure for sure.
Of course. Santiago, let's now do maybe a quick round. I would just give you some words and you have to very quickly decide which one you prefer. Ready? So first is the AWS or Azure.
Depends. Right now, I would say AWS. In a couple of
AWS.
years, Azure.
Okay. Linux or Windows.
Depends. For work, Linux.
Hmm.
Personal use, Windows.
Okay, got it. iPhone or Android.
Android.
Okay. C or Python.
Depends as well. If you need something very efficient, something that compiles really quick, I would say C. But if
Hmm.
you are working a very very complex project, Python might be the best approach.
Definitely, yeah, yeah, yeah. Good point. So I think we are slowly finishing with all the questions. Just maybe the last one. I would like, as a closing remark, I would like you to give advice to people who would like to enter IT, and also I would like you to give the advice for people that are already in the industry, when it comes, for example, learning new stuff or how to keep up, or any advice that you have for the people that are joining IT, would like to land their first job, and people that are already in the industry like me, for example.
A general advice I could give is just to be, as we mentioned before, be very flexible.
Mm-hmm.
And develop the skill of learning how to learn.
Hmm.
That's essential. And in general, if you are new into tech, or you are considering about changing industries and join this one, I think I might say something very stereotypical with these buzzwords that have been around
Hmm.
over the last couple of years, but focus on data and AI and cloud.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
just to sum it up even more, AI and cloud. Those
Hmm.
are like the main skills that are valuable for the job market right now in tech, AI and cloud. So
Yeah.
if you're just starting, choose one of those.
Hmm. 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 Yeah, I am myself not in that much into the data science and AI, but I have seen some of the tools that are available on Azure when it comes for the processing of data. It's super powerful. It's super powerful. You can do so many things, and it's just so easy, really. And just when I have seen few videos explaining how the things work, I think it's called Learning Studio or something, or Data Science Studio. They have, these are just such great products for people to who would like to see the machine patterns, data patterns, and then get some intelligence on top of that to make a better business decision. So I agree with you. Yeah.
And those are skills that every single company needs,
Hmm.
like retail, e-commerce, banking,
Yeah.
telecommunications, fashion, fast food. Everything at some point is going to be dependent on cloud technologies and AI. So if you don't want to worry about getting a job ever, follow one of these paths, either AI or cloud.
Yeah. Okay. Super. Thank you. Thank you very much, Santiago. It was a great interview. And if, guys, please remember to subscribe and like this channel if you also enjoyed this material. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.